Hello guys, welcome back. I'm your friend Insect. So today we will try to write some Flutter code. This is a front-end framework. And to be specific, why I do this? Because Python is kind of like a back-end programming language. If you want to make some mobile application, Python probably won't help you, won't be able to help you. So you have to learn some other programming languages. Some of them may learn the JavaScript and especially the React Native framework. But for others like me, I just feel that JavaScript is not a good language for making a mobile application. It's just too complicated for me. I mean, I indeed have learned that stuff and tried my best to make some mobile application, and it's usable but not perfect. But if you use the Flutter, if you use this framework, you can make some beautiful mobile application. While it's also cross-platform, you can use this framework to make some Android application, or you can make some iOS application. So that's good. And for today's tutorial, I just want to add the SQL support to my application because I want to save some data to the storage. And what I am making for now is an offline application. It doesn't require the network, so I don't have to use Python to make some backend code or something like that. I do not want to do that because I don't have a usable Linux server in the cloud. I don't have that, so I'll just make an offline application. Anyway, first to use the SQL, first we need to add the dependencies, which called SQLite. Okay, that would be in this field, pub specific. Let's see if we have installed it or not. Okay, here we go. I got the SQLite and the path available. Then we need to make sure to import the package in the field that we will be working on. Just 3 lines of codes. So let's say where we wanna put it into. How about we put it in the model or the stone code? Because this is a kind of like a global variable that we could use. For example, I can show you something. For example, here I get 2 messages. One is called 101. That's a data. That's a date, and the content is I love you. Now if I run this code, let me press F5. I feel so sorry for my old laptop because it really takes very long to load it. But here you can say this is actually the user interface, kind of like this. We can see the data and we can see the content. You may get shocked by this beautiful UI, but yes, that's what we can do with the Flutter framework. For example, now I could change the content. I would change the I love you to I hate you and save it. And boom, we would say the contents just get changed immediately. That's the power of hot load. I don't think you can find the alternative for Python because there has no Python user interface framework that could be able to do the hot load for you. They just do not have that feature. So if you want to create some user interface, do not use Python. It's a mistake of choosing. But anyway, what we are going to do is to create a SQL database, and we will try to add some messages to it and retrieve it back into a list of this. Okay, that's what we want to do. So let's go on. First, define the dog data model. I do not want to define the dog model. On the contrary, I want to define a message model, something like this. We get the data, we get the contents. Then define the path to the database file using getDatabase path from the SQLite packaging. Something like that. Let's just copy this code. And I'm going to paste it to somewhere. I do not exactly know where I should put that codes into. So I'm gonna go to my GitHub page and search for the, let's say, Flutter OCR. This is an old repository that I made. And it got some useful codes that we might need. I'm pretty sure it's in the model.dart file. Okay, here we go. If we have defined a model, we could call the model name to do an initialization. So the same thing applies to this model, last model. We just have to give it the same line, and this would be the initiate function. For this case, let's just copy this code. We'll get Flutter binding ensure initialized the database equal to open database with something like this. Here it got a keyword await, so it must be an animus function. Is1 and say, let's do this, see if it's working. Constructors can't have a return type. Try to remove the return type. Actually, I didn't return anything. That's kind of weird. Oh, we should say the AS1C keyword before this crack it. So I put it in here. The modifier AS1C can be applied to the body of a constructor. Try removing the modifier. No, it cannot be placed in there. That's kind of weird. Okay, then I'll create a new function for it. Okay, I will say node database or something like that. Load database. This is a function. AS1C asynchronous function. Here we should have a square. Okay. This is called opening parentheses. We should have parentheses in here. Okay, seems to be right. And all we have to do is change this database name. I would just like to call it database. Okay, after the loading, what should we do? We know that this function going to return a future kind of stuff. Future of database. So we need to return it. Return the database. And we get some functions to set in. For example, we can give it two parameters, onCreate parameter and the version. And for this case, let me just remove all those comments. That makes sense. I mean, we do not need that. I know every part of this code. For example, the onCreate, I guess it probably means that if this database does not exist, onCreate, we create the table information about it. We do it by execute and database command. For example, here it is create table called docs. I don't want to call it docs. I just want to say messages, right? I will call this table messages. And for this table, it got the integer primary k. It's just a series number from 0 to infinity. The len, I do not need the len. I need the date. And I don't need the age. I need also a string, but I'll call it content. And it's a text. Okay, this is a basic structure of our database. Let's go on. insert a dog into the database. Insert a dog. I don't know. Here he just made a function to map, to convert the object dog to probably a string. I don't know it. Now I'm gonna try to create the same stuff in here. So for to map the ID, I don't think that we would have an ID. No, we will not use the ID. Oh, actually, we do not have an ID. I'm going to delete it. We do not need an ID. But for this case, we would need a dat and a content. No errors. That's cool. After that, let's say we can create another function. They call it insert dog. I call it insert message. And for this function, it's going to receive a message object. I start to think about one thing. Maybe I should put this database stuff to the above of everything. For example, in the main.dart file, before we run the application, we call this stuff, and we somehow do a predefine of the database. Then in the button of that, we can just say database equal to that. And for this function, it should be a s1say function. Now we only got the error that we made is that we need 3 packages. Okay, after the importing, we got it right. So now let's go back to the last stuff. Now we import the main file from here. Okay, after that we should be able to get the database variable as an global variable. And for that case, let's say we got the database, cool. And database insert to a table. This table would be the name of the table would be messages. And here I'm gonna say msg to map, message to map. Okay, basically this is a insert function. Then we need to retrieve the list of messages. This is how we do it. We create another function. For this function, it will return us a list of messaging. I'm going to call this, what are we gonna do? I'm going to just, no. Let's say we say this, get a messaging last. And for this case, it will query us a list from table which named messages. Then it will return us a message with not lamb but dat and content. Alright, that's a function. Then I'm going to say as1say future. No, list of message. Functions marked as1say must have a return type assignable to future. Okay, I'll do that. Future with a list of messages. So for now, we do not need the direct return anymore. Instead, I'm gonna say return get a message list. Okay, perfect. We got an error. As the Dart has some error handling kind of stuff. Okay, let's just forget about it. Instead, let's just first return directly about some fixed message. Then we create a function in our main app user interface. From there, I guess we got a floating button. Here you can say an add button, blue button in the right corner. When we press that, I just want to create a function to help us to do something. For example, I just want to add some elements to our database. Insert message with a message type of that. I need some reference from my old code because I couldn't really remember how did I made all those codes. Even it's just before 4 months ago, couldn't really remember that. Okay, here we go. Provider of something. So in the inside of the build function, I'm going to say last model would be equal to provider of last model less than equal to false. Okay, from this last model, we could call that function insert message. Then we could give it a message with data to whatever number you like. So I would say counter that to string. Then it is a content. This can be actually any string. I don't care about that. But before we do that insert, I'm gonna say counter increased to increase that number, or this function increment counter. Okay, after that we should be able to add something to our database. Now I'm going to restart this application. We got an error. The getter length isn't specified for the type future last message. That was interesting. So let's do this. We still call the get message last, but we will say then if that was done, we do something about it. This is how we use futures in the carols. No, in the Dart. We say function dot then with the process value. We do something about it. Then that's it. So this would be the last of values. For the last of values, I create a message stuff in the initialize function. Say messages. It should be a last of message. At the beginning, it's equal to an empty last. Or I call it temp messages. Then I would say the temp messages equal to last of values. And I would say catch error. This is another function. If error happened, I would say temp messages equal to the predefined last. In the end, we return the temp messages. Okay, now the error should be gone. We still got some errors. It is said that no plugin found for the Linux system. That could be a serious problem. That only means I will have to start a mobile emulation for it. Okay, now I got an Android emulator. I'm going to run this framework again. Let's say if we can get a good mobile application. Next time I brought Apple Mac Airbook, the latest version of that. I brought that laptop because it seems like for others laptop it's just hard to use. Either it cannot live long if you cut off the power supply, or it was lack of performances, like this one I'm using. The ThinkPad Yoga 260 an old machine, so it's quite slow if we do the development of a mobile application. That's also why you haven't seen me do this development often, because I just feel it's too slow. Okay, finally it's correctly started, but with an error. Invalid arguments on error. Access one element or one object and whatever tree. Yeah, this could be a problem, but for the whole program, it's just what I expected. Okay, I think it's just it might be a problem that related to the error handling. I need to give it some values, or let's say errors. And for this case, it's just working without any problems. I do a reload. Then for each time, if I add something to it, oh, you can see it. As you can see, here we got a 1, 2. And now if I click the add button again, we get another 2 stuffs. Now we get the 5. If I click it again, I get the 6. If I click it again, I get the 7. Click it again, we get the should be 8. And as you can see, it's a scrollable last. It's just too slow, so hard to interact with it. But anyway, we made it. We have loaded some data from the SQL database. Now if I stop the whole program and start it again, let me just do this. Stop it, and the software was gone. And if we start it again, we could say that our software has been loaded successfully, but without any elements inside of it. Why this would happen? Because it's probably related to the time. By that time, it's the database haven't been initialized. I need to change the code for a little bit. So for this case, I'm going to say await. I'm going to call this database just database. And after that, for the last, we do not have to use await anymore. For the main function, we need to save it. And now, as you can see, we got the last correctly. What I have done is to make sure our database is loaded. Then we run our user interface, and it's just working as I expected. Good. So this is the start of our journey. I hope you enjoyed as I did. But I still want to say, even if you use a Flutter, you have to make sure you get a powerful computer to actually do the mobile development. Otherwise, you'll get disappointed. And you will find that, for your old computer, you can only do some Python development or C++ development, such of things like that. Okay, that's today's tutorial. I will see you in the next one. Bye.